The night my son told me there was a door in our basement wall, it was 11:03 p.m., and I was dead asleep. I woke to a cold, shaking hand on my shoulder and Marcus's whisper in my ear. "Mom, wake up, please." There's a special kind of panic that lives in you after you've gotten that phone call once. For a second, I thought I was back there. Sirens, hospital. We did everything we could. Then my eyes focused. I was in my bed. My 8-year-old was the one trembling. I turned on the lamp. His face was drained of color, eyes huge. "There's someone in the walls," he said. "I know how that sounds, but hear me out. Marcus is not a monster under the bed kid. This is the child who lines up his pencils by length and corrects my spelling. But his hands were shaking." "What happened?" I sat up. "I went downstairs to get water," he said. "I heard it from the basement. Not in the basement, from inside the wall. And there's a door now, a door that wasn't there before." My brain immediately started doing what it always does, list the logical options. Old pipes, heater, house settling, neighbor's TV, weird dream. The part of me that lives on Google and home inspection blogs nodded along. Another part of me went very, very quiet. "Okay," I said. "Let's go look." He grabbed my hand and we walked down the hallway past the smiling wedding photo of me and David in front of this house. 10-month whirlwind courtship, 8 months married, second husband, second try. My mom adores him. My friends say I finally picked well. I want them to be right so badly it should probably count as a medical condition. We reached the basement door. The security panel beside it glowed green. David installed that right after we moved in. Cameras, sensors, upgraded locks. "For our protection," he said, kissing my forehead. After losing my first husband in a random crash, protection is a very persuasive word. I flipped on the light and we went down. The basement looked exactly like it always does. Washer, dryer, metal shelves, plastic bins, labeled in my neat handwriting, Halloween, Christmas, taxes, baby clothes, the gray safe in the corner, a laundry basket full of David's shirts. He insists on handling the basement laundry himself. "You do so much already, babe," he always says. "Let me be the laundry goblin." "Where?" I asked. Marcus pointed at the wall behind the washer. "There, the door was right there. White door, silver handle. It was open. I heard, talking. But fuzzy. Like David's work calls when the Wi-Fi is bad." The hair on my arm stood up. I walked to the wall and laid my palm on it. Drywall. Cool. Solid. No seams. No outline. No door. "Sweetie, there's no door," I said, keeping my voice calm. "It's just a wall. Old houses make weird sounds. Pipes, heater, maybe a mouse. When we're tired or scared, our brains fill in the blanks and turn sounds into stories." Looking back, this was probably red flag number 7, but I was counting them like they were frequent flyer miles toward normal family life, so I treated it like a perk instead of a warning. "I wasn't tired," he whispered, and I didn't imagine it. His eyes were shiny, jaw set. He believed what he'd seen. Standing in the bright, detergent-smelling basement, I believed he believed it. But the room itself was aggressively ordinary. "Tell you what," I said, "if you hear it again, you come get me immediately. No thinking about it, no waiting. Deal?" He nodded, but his shoulders stayed stiff. We went back upstairs. I locked the basement door out of habit and glanced at the tiny hallway camera in the corner. Another David project. Cameras, glass break sensors, motion detectors. He double-checks every window before bed. He keeps his home office locked, even when he's on a break. "Work confidentiality," he says. "Boring grown-up stuff." He looks like a man who is very serious about safety. I just hadn't asked closely enough whose. I tucked Marcus into bed. His astronaut nightlight glowed softly on the dresser, throwing little stars across his ceiling. "Want the hallway light on?" I asked. "Yeah," he said quickly. I turned it on. "You're safe," I told him. "If you hear anything weird, you come straight to me, no matter what time, okay?" "Okay." I was almost at the door when I heard a scrape. I turned. Marcus had climbed out of bed and was dragging his desk chair over. He wedged it firmly under the doorknob, both hands on the backrest, breathing hard. "Hey," I said slowly, "what are you doing?" "In case the door comes back," he muttered. Then, even quieter, "or David." My brain did not enjoy that sentence. "What about David?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "He comes in sometimes," Marcus said, eyes still on the door. "At night, when you're asleep. He stands there for a long time, like he's listening. I pretend to sleep so he'll go." My stomach dropped. My mouth, meanwhile, went straight into defense mode. "He's probably just checking on you," I said. "He cares about you. He's still figuring out the whole stepdad thing." "Then why does it feel wrong?" Marcus asked. That question hit harder than I wanted it to. "I'll talk to him," I said. "Make sure he doesn't wake you up. But you don't have to be scared of David, okay?" He didn't answer. He just climbed back into bed and pulled the covers up, eyes flicking between me and the blocked door. I left him like that and went to our room. David was already under the covers, scrolling his phone. He looked up when I came in. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Marcus thought he heard something in the basement," I said. "He got spooked." "Old house," David said immediately. "Pipes. I'll check it out tomorrow." Of course he would. David checks everything. He does. The laundry. He watches the cameras. He updates the security codes. He keeps us safe. That's the story I've been repeating to myself for 8 months. I lay there listening to the faint hum of the security system and told myself my son had a nightmare and my husband was just a responsible man. I went with the version that let me sleep. In the morning, I went to wake Marcus for school. The desk chair was still jammed under the doorknob. "Morning," I said softly, moving it aside. He sat up too fast, eyes darting to the corner by his dresser. I followed his gaze. The astronaut nightlight. I'm absolutely sure I turned on was lying on the floor, unplugged. "I didn't touch it," Marcus blurted. "I swear, Mom, I didn't get out of bed." "I believe you," I said, and I actually did. A shadow fell across the doorway. David leaned there, mug of coffee in hand, hair still damp from the shower, looking like an advertisement for a normal morning husband. "What's up?" he asked. "His nightlight was unplugged," I said. David glanced at it and shrugged. "He probably kicked the cord in his sleep," he said easily, smiling at Marcus. "Happens all the time, buddy." Marcus flinched at the word buddy. I smiled back at my husband like that explanation made perfect sense, and I filed the whole thing very carefully into the probably nothing folder in my head, on top of a stack of things that didn't feel like nothing at all. By the end of that week, Marcus's mattress was on my bedroom floor like we were having the world's saddest sleepover. The sounds hadn't stopped. They weren't every night. That would almost have been easier. At least then we'd have a pattern. Instead, every couple nights, around 1 or 2 in the morning, Marcus would jolt up, crawl across my floor in his blanket like a terrified caterpillar, and whisper, "It's happening again." He described it the same way every time. Muffled voices, a low hum like a TV behind a wall that shouldn't exist. Always, it came from the basement. But not really from the basement. "Inside it," he'd say, pressing his hand against my wall like he could feel vibrations through drywall. The first night, I let him sleep on the floor, just until you calmed down. The second night, I folded a blanket under his head to make it more comfortable. Just for tonight. By night 4, I had resigned myself to stepping over my child to get to my closet. David, to his credit, seemed understanding, on the surface. One evening after Marcus was finally asleep, David leaned against the dresser, arms folded loosely, watching the rise and fall of Marcus's blanket. "Poor kid," he murmured. "He's been through a lot." My chest pinched. He meant the accident. Marcus was 4 when his dad died. I was the one who got the call and then had to turn to a tiny boy with dinosaur pajamas and rewrite his whole world in one sentence. I still don't know which of us broke more. David's voice was soft. "Maybe it's catching up with him," he said. "Grief comes in waves, you know? Nightmares, anxiety, hearing things. Maybe it's time to get him someone to talk to, a professional. He said it so gently that my first response was guilt, not suspicion. Because here's the ugly truth. I had thought about therapy for Marcus. I'd also thought about therapy for me. I'd Googled child grief counseling at least 3 times and then closed the tab every time when the reality and cost and logistics started to feel like a second ocean I might drown in. Maybe you're right, I said, staring at Marcus's sleeping face. Maybe I'm making it worse. Projecting. Hey. David came over and wrapped his arms around me from behind. You're doing your best, but he's seeing doors that aren't there and hearing things in the walls. You don't want him stuck in that, do you? When he put it like that, my rational brain nodded along. My gut, meanwhile, was banging on a locked door somewhere inside me, and I was ignoring it because it was inconvenient. The more I tried to reason away the creepy stuff, the more I started noticing. David. Nothing big. Nothing you could take to the police or even to a friend without sounding like a paranoid podcast episode. Just patterns. He'd always been a late worker. That was part of his financial consultant remote vibe. He joked that the markets never sleep, and apparently neither did his clients. But now that I was half awake more nights, listening for Marcus's breathing on the floor, I started hearing something else. The soft click of our bedroom door as David slipped out at 3:07 a.m., the creak of the hallway floorboard by the linen closet at 4:52, the almost inaudible sound of his office door closing at 5:10. One night, as I lay there staring at the ceiling, I heard his voice low and urgent through the wall. Our bedroom shares a wall with his office. If he doesn't use headphones, I get bits and pieces. No, the transfer already cleared. No, it's secured. I told you they can't trace this. I froze. I told myself I misheard, that he said they can't face this, or we can't race this. Some nonsense phrase my brain turned into a crime thriller, because I've listened to too many true crime podcasts while folding laundry. The next night, different time, same tone. Wire it in smaller amounts. Yes, I know the policy. I said I'll handle it. The next morning over coffee, I tried to sound casual. Rough week, I asked. You were up late. I heard you on a call. He looked tired, but when he smiled, it was the same easy, warm smile that melted my mother's skepticism in 5 minutes. Just boring financial stuff, he said, leaning over to kiss my forehead. You'd die of boredom 15 seconds in. Don't worry about it. Pre-marriage me might have pushed. What kind of financial stuff uses the phrase, they can't trace this? Widow me, the one who has lived both the reality of loss and the fear of it happening again, smiled and let it go. Because if I asked the question and didn't like the answer, then what? Still, something had shifted. I started watching. This is where I confess the thing I'm not proud of. One afternoon, David came home from a run, sweaty and breathless, and went straight to the shower. Marcus was at a friend's house. The upstairs was quiet. I walked past his office and stopped. The door, as always, was closed. He never left it open. Even when he came out, just for a snack, he pulled it shut and I heard the little snick of the lock. Client confidentiality, he'd said the one time I teased him about it. If my files ever leak, I'm toast. Better safe than sorry, right? Standing there in the hallway, listening to the water running, I told myself I was just going to check, not break in, not snoop, just gently jiggle the handle and prove to myself that I was being ridiculous. I wrapped my fingers around the knob and turned. Locked. Of course. The little spike of disappointment I felt was revealing. If I had nothing to hide and David tried my office door while I was in the shower, I'd feel violated. I stood there, hand on the locked knob, suddenly aware I had crossed a line I'd once sworn never to cross again. I pulled my hand back like it had burned me and walked downstairs, heart pounding, telling myself I was being insane. To prove to myself he wasn't doing anything shady, I did something else I'm not proud of. I opened our joint banking app. The numbers were fine. Better than fine. His paychecks were regular. No massive cash withdrawals, no weird overseas transfers, no surprise credit card balances. I stared at the list of perfectly normal transactions: groceries, utilities, Marcus's school fees, my Target run, and felt stupid. I closed the app and sat there, feeling like I'd just rifled through his phone while he was asleep, even though I'd technically done nothing wrong. At breakfast the next morning, Marcus was pushing his cereal around, spoon clinking against the bowl. "Eat," I said automatically. "We're going to be late." "David gets mail that he hides," he said without looking up. My brain tripped. "What?" He shrugged, eyes still on his bowl. "Sometimes when the mail comes, he gets it first. He takes some letters straight downstairs. He doesn't put them on the counter." "We have a system. All mail goes on the kitchen counter. I sort. Bills, junk, Marcus's future art, as I call the preschool-level origami from charities. It's one of those tiny domestic routines that grease the wheels of a life." "Are you sure?" I asked. Marcus nodded. "White envelopes, but they look thicker." He folds them and puts them in his pocket. I filed that away, my appetite gone. Later that day, Ima tried to bring up David's family. I realized I knew basically nothing about them beyond a few vague references. We were in the car, traffic thick, some podcast mumbling in the background. "Hey," I said, "when are we ever going to meet your family? You've met my mom, my cousin, my entire chaotic village. You're the mystery man still." He tightened his grip on the steering wheel just enough for me to notice. "We're not close," he said. "They're complicated." "Complicated how?" I pressed gently. He waved off the question. "Let's not waste date night talking about people I don't see anymore," he said, and switched the subject to restaurant reservations so smoothly I almost let him. Almost. A few days later, a package arrived. I was in the kitchen when the delivery guy knocked. The box was medium-sized, plain brown, but the sticker caught my eye. Fragile. Medical. Before my brain could finish assembling a normal explanation, David appeared in the doorway. "Oh, that's mine," he said too quickly. He crossed the room and took the box from my hands like it was a bomb. "Work stuff. Client documents." "Why does it say medical?" I asked. "Vendor name," he said, already moving toward the hallway. "They handle some paperwork for a health fund. Nothing interesting, trust me." He took it straight to his office. I heard the lock click a second later. 2 nights after that, I borrowed his car to run to the store. When I shifted into park back in our driveway, a receipt slid out from between the seat and console and landed in my lap. Storage Solutions, Unit 317, monthly rental, date, 3 weeks ago. We do not have a storage unit. I stared at it longer than I should have, then tucked it back exactly where I'd found it. My heart was pounding again, but the rational voice in my head was louder. "There are 100 normal reasons for a storage unit, Sarah. Seasonal stuff, old furniture, files. Don't turn every shadow into a monster." I was so busy trying not to be paranoid that I almost missed the most obvious change. David's new night walks. He'd always liked evening strolls. It was one of the first things I liked about him, how he'd coax me off the couch and say, "Come on, let's do a lap around the block and pretend we're outdoorsy." But now, the walks had shifted. 1 a.m., the mattress beside me empty. 2 a.m., the front door closing, soft as a secret. I'd glance at the alarm panel and see it briefly disarmed, then back on. Once, I peeked through the blinds and saw him standing in our driveway, not walking, just standing, hands in his pockets, staring down the street like he was waiting for something. "Just clearing my head," he said when I asked about it. "Can't sleep lately. Don't worry." That phrase again, "don't worry." I didn't sleep deeply after that. The night it tipped from uneasy to, "okay, something is wrong," was the night I woke up at exactly 2:13 a.m. to the sound of nothing. Silence can be its own kind of alarm. I reached out. David's side of the bed was cold. I sat up. The house was dark, but there was a faint glow seeping under our bedroom door. Not the bluish flicker of the TV, a steady, warm light. I slipped out of bed, careful not to step on Marcus's hand where it stuck out from his blanket. I opened the door, down the hallway, past the family photos and the security panel's little green eye. A thin slit of light was visible at the bottom of the basement door. My heart thudded in my ears. I walked toward it, every instinct divided between go back to bed and open the damn door. My hand found the railing as I eased the basement door open. The light was brighter now, spilling up the stairs from below. "David?" I called softly. No answer. I took one step down, then another. The wood creaked under my bare feet. My fingers tightened on the railing. Halfway down, the light went out. Not flickered, not dimmed. It vanished, like someone threw a switch. I froze, breathing shallow. The basement below was now a rectangle of black. "David?" I tried again, louder. Nothing. I forced myself to keep going, step by step, rehearsing stupid explanations in my head. Timer light, power glitch, old wiring, anything but the feeling crawling up my spine. I hit the bottom and reached blindly for the wall switch. My fingers brushed it. Couldn't sleep? The voice came from directly behind me on the stairs. I jumped so hard my hand slapped the wall. I spun around. David stood 2 steps above me, shadowed but close enough that I could see the curve of his smile. The dim light from the hallway caught his face, easy and calm. "You scared me," I laughed weakly. "Where were you?" "Bathroom," he said smoothly. "Heard you get up. Thought you might be heading down to investigate the monsters." He stepped past me, his hand brushing my arm. That's when I smelled it. Not soap, not aftershave. A sharp chemical tang that slapped against the back of my throat. Bleach. His hands smelled like bleach. Marcus refused to go to school on Thursday. Not complained, not dragged his feet, not mom. I feel sick. He wrapped his arms around my waist at the bottom of the stairs and sobbed into my sweater like a drowning kid clinging to driftwood. "Please don't make me go. Please don't make me go back there." His voice was hoarse. His eyes, usually so bright, were ringed with dark smudges, like someone had shaded him with charcoal. He hadn't slept more than an hour or two at a time in days, and I, the queen of rational explanations and Google diagnostics, couldn't come up with a single believable reason to force him out the door. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, you stay with me today." He sagged with relief, but didn't let go. David came down the stairs seconds later, tie in hand, already frowning. "What's going on?" he asked. "He's exhausted," I said. "I'm keeping him home." David opened his mouth. Frustration flashed in his eyes. Then he smoothed it out so fast it was almost physical whiplash. "Well," he said lightly, "kids have off days. I have a meeting with a client at 10. I'll be back this afternoon." He kissed my cheek, squeezed Marcus's shoulder a little too firmly, and left. The second the door closed, Marcus whispered, "He's mad." "I don't care if he's mad," I said. "You're staying home." But the truth was, I did care. Or rather, I cared about why he was mad, because underneath that flash of irritation there had been something else. Something tight. Something that didn't belong to a worried stepfather. Trying to shake it off, I said, "Come on, we're going downstairs, in the daylight. I want you to show me exactly what you saw." Marcus looked terrified. "Mom, I don't want to—" "I'll be with you," I said. "Nothing is going to happen. We're going to look together, and then we'll finally know." He still hesitated, so I offered my hand. He held it so tight my fingers tingled. We walked to the basement door. The morning sun streamed through the windows. The house felt normal, almost cheerful. It was the perfect time to disprove nightmares. I opened the basement door. The stairs creaked softly as we descended. "Show me," I said. He pointed again to the wall behind the washer. Same place as before, same plain white drywall. I needed him to see there was nothing here. I needed me to see there was nothing here. "Help me move these," I said, dragging a stack of storage bins away from the wall. We pushed Christmas decorations, tax boxes, half-forgotten baby toys, my entire domestic life in plastic containers, until a section of wall was completely exposed. Marcus stood there gripping the hem of his shirt. "There was a door," he whispered. "I wasn't lying." "I know," I said automatically, surprised to hear the words come out of my mouth. I don't know what I expected to find. Maybe a pipe vent, a weird discoloration, anything that could count as a door-shaped illusion for a terrified 8-year-old. What happened next was not that. Marcus stepped forward, placed his small hand on the wall, and click. The wall itself shifted, a clean mechanical sound, pressure releasing. The drywall panel moved inward by less than an inch. My heart slammed into my ribs. "Marcus," I breathed. "Step back." He did, eyes wide. I pressed my fingertips against the same spot. The panel flexed again, a disguised hinge. The entire sheet of drywall swung inward like a hidden cabinet door, revealing a real door, steel, industrial, matte gray, with a keypad. My blood went cold. This was not here when we moved in 8 months ago. I would stake every list I've ever color-coded on that fact. This was installed by David. "He built this," I whispered. Marcus pressed, close to my side, trembling. "Why is it here?" he whispered. I didn't have an answer. I tried the obvious codes: my birthday, Marcus's birthday, our anniversary. The keypad beeped red each time. But then I saw it, on the right side of the frame. The latch wasn't fully engaged. The door was slightly ajar. Someone, probably David, had closed it in a hurry and hadn't realized it didn't catch. My hands shook as I curled my fingers around the edge and pulled. The door opened with a low metallic groan. The room was small, maybe 10 by 10 feet, lit by a bright overhead LED panel. Clean, too clean. And what was inside made absolutely no sense. A medical cot sat against the far wall, with restraints, padded, buckled. My stomach turned. Beside it was a small table with coloring books, crayons, a stuffed elephant, a beanbag, a shelf lined with children's picture books. In the corner, a mini fridge hummed quietly. Inside, juice boxes, applesauce pouches, snack-sized packs of crackers. Next to the fridge, medical supplies, IV bags, tubing, syringes, prescription bottles with the labels scratched off. My breath caught. A filing cabinet, locked. A corkboard on the wall covered in photographs. Dozens. Different children, different ages, different locations. Some were school portraits, some candid, some printed on glossy paper, others clearly screenshots. Years' worth. And on the desk beneath the board sat a closed laptop. But this room was wrong. All wrong. Horrifying and confusing. It was not a torture chamber. It wasn't a playroom. It was something in between. Something that made my entire brain rebel. "Mom," Marcus whispered, voice cracking. "What is this place?" "I don't know," I said, and my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. My mind began firing through explanations, each one more desperate than the last. Was David helping sick children somehow? Secret charity work? Off-the-books medical care? But why hide it? And why the locked door, the false wall, the restraints? Were these kidnapped children? I felt the floor tilt under me. Images rushed back. David asking about Marcus's routines, exactly when I pick him up, who watches him after school, when he goes to bed. David saying he knew what it was like to grow up in bad situations, the faraway look in his eyes. David's strangely intense reaction when I mentioned my friend's daughter going into foster care. So many careful questions afterward. Oh my God, my legs went cold. "Mom," Marcus tugged at my sleeve. "We should go, please. I need to see." That's when the laptop screen lit up on its own. It wasn't closed, just sleeping. The display brightened, revealing a quad-screen security feed. 4 camera angles, each labeled. Front door, backyard, hallway, and the 4th, Marcus's bedroom, live, right now. His empty bed was shown from multiple angles. One above the door, one behind the bookcase, one from the ceiling corner. I recognized the posters on his wall, his tiny shoes by the bed. My vision tunneled. David had been watching my son sleep. For how long? I grabbed Marcus with one arm, ready to run. And then I heard it. Above us. The heavy rumble. The unmistakable mechanical grind of the garage door opening. David was home. Early. If you've never sprinted up a flight of stairs with your child under one arm and your entire reality under the other, I don't recommend it. The garage door was still grinding open when I slammed the hidden door shut, shoved the drywall panel back into place with a hollow thud, and grabbed Marcus. "Don't say anything," I whispered. "Stay behind me. Do not let go of my shirt. Do you hear me?" He nodded, eyes huge. I snatched my phone off the basement shelf as we ran past, 911 already open from the 100 times I'd hovered over it in the last week and never pressed call. My thumb hovered over the green button so hard it hurt. We hit the main floor just as the door from the garage opened. David stepped in, carrying a grocery bag like this was any other Thursday. "Hey, I found your room," I said. My voice sounded strange. Too calm. Too clear. The kind of voice you get when your body has decided to outsource panic to later. Marcus's fist twisted in the back of my shirt, right between my shoulder blades. For a fraction of a second, David's face went utterly blank. I'd expected anger, denial, gaslighting. Maybe the practiced indignation of a man caught red-handed. What I got was relief. His shoulders slumped, his jaw unclenched. His eyes closed for a heartbeat like someone had just taken a 50-pound weight off his chest. "Thank God," he said quietly. That threw me more than if he'd lunged at us. "Don't move," I snapped. "I'm calling the police." "I know how it looks," he said, holding his hands up halfway like he was approaching a skittish animal. "I know exactly how it looks, but it's not what you think." "Really?" My laugh came out sharp. Because right now, I'm thinking about the hidden door in my basement, the medical cot with restraints, the photos of children on your wall, and the cameras in my son's bedroom. Marcus made a tiny, strangled sound behind me. David flinched. "Sarah and bleach," I added. "Let's not forget that your hands smelled like bleach at 2 a.m. For a second, something like shame flickered across his face. "I've been carrying this alone for so long," he said, almost to himself. Then louder, "Can we please sit down?" "No," I said. "You talk right here. Now. And if I don't like what I hear, I press this." I lifted the phone slightly. He looked at the phone, then at Marcus, then back at me. "Okay," he said. "Okay, you deserve the truth." The words came out in a rush, like they'd been bottling up for years. "I'm not a financial consultant," he said. I blinked. "What?" "It's a cover," he said. "The degree is real. I understand money, but that's not what I do. Not really." He took a breath. You could call it an unlicensed social worker, or a fixer, or an idiot depending on your perspective." He ran a hand through his hair, eyes flicking to Marcus again. "I help kids who are in danger," he said. "Kids who can't wait for CPS or the courts or 10 layers of paperwork. Kids who will be dead or trafficked before the system even assigns them a caseworker." My brain tried to process that and failed. "That room downstairs," he went on, "is a holding space, a safe room. I get calls from teachers, nurses, neighbors, people who see something and know that if they report it formally, the wheels will turn too slowly. So they call me. I pick the kids up. I hide them for 24 to 72 hours while I arrange transport and placement with families or facilities out of state. People I trust. People who've passed every unofficial background check I know how to run." He looked at me like he was waiting for lightning to strike. I just stared at him. "The medical supplies?" he continued. "That package you saw? The fragile medical one? Insulin, antibiotics, basic things for kids whose parents neglect them or whose abusers won't take them to hospitals because they're afraid of mandatory reporting. He swallowed. And the restraints, I said, the word tasting like rust. His voice dropped. One teen, years ago. He was detoxing. He begged me to keep him from leaving. I didn't want to, Sarah. I still have nightmares about that week. But his dealer lived 2 streets away, and every time he could stand, he tried to go back. We used soft restraints so he couldn't walk out in the middle of the night. He's clean now, has a kid of his own. He sends me a Christmas card every year, and I still hate myself when I open it. He wasn't crying, but his voice frayed around the edges. It was like my brain was standing in front of a corkboard, pinning his explanation over every weird thing I'd noticed. The late-night phone calls, the phrases transfer, secured. They can't trace this. Not drug money. Transport arrangements and burner phones, the storage unit receipt, supplies and files kept away from the house so nothing would lead back to us if someone snooped. The bleach on his hands, not covering up a crime, sanitizing between children, disinfecting surfaces so a kid with a weak immune system didn't leave sicker than they came. It all fit, and at the same time, it didn't, because none of it answered the most obvious question. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded. It came out sharper and more wounded than I meant it to, like someone had kicked a crack straight through the center of my chest. If you're some kind of underground hero, why didn't you let me in on the secret instead of turning my house into that? Why didn't you let me decide if I wanted my son anywhere near this? David closed his eyes for a second, like he'd been bracing for that hit. Because it's illegal, he said simply. All of it. Harboring minors, transporting them across state lines, creating false trails so their abusers can't find them. If the authorities ever connect the dots, I go to prison. The foster families who took them in, prosecuted. The teachers and nurses who called me instead of going straight through official channels, they lose their jobs, their licenses. And the kids, he blew out a breath. Most of them would go right back into the system that already failed them. I stared at him, phone still clutched like a lifeline. And me? I asked. What about me? What about him? I jerked my thumb backward at Marcus. You didn't think I might have an opinion about any of this? I did, he said. Every day, every time I looked at you and thought, if she knew, she'd never sleep again. He swallowed. I told myself I'd stop once we were serious, once you and Marcus were in the picture. But then a call would come in, a teacher saying, if I send this girl home, she'll be dead by Monday. What was I supposed to do? Tell them, sorry, I met someone? I kept waiting for the right moment to tell you, and then there never was one. Just more kids, more emergencies. I wanted to scream that met someone and married someone were different categories, but the words tangled in my throat. And the cameras, I forced out, in my son's bedroom. He winced. I know how that looks. I installed them after the first time I brought a child here. I have a safe room, but kids wander, especially at night. They're scared, confused. Sometimes they sleepwalk. I needed to know no one was going near Marcus while he slept. The cameras are motion triggered. I only checked the feed to make sure he was safe. My skin crawled anyway. So you decided the way to protect my son was to secretly surveil him. I decided the way to protect your son was to make sure no one touched his door without me knowing, he shot back, then visibly reined himself in. You're right. I should have asked. I just didn't know how to explain it without explaining everything. For a moment, the kitchen was silent except for the soft hum of the fridge and Marcus's shaky breathing. I looked at my phone, at David, at the man I married who apparently saves children for a living and lies for a hobby. There's one more thing you need to know, he said quietly. My stomach dropped. Of course there is. There's a child in the house right now. Everything inside me went still. What? My voice came out in a whisper. A 6-year-old girl, he said. Her name is Emma. She's in a safe space upstairs. I didn't use the basement because I wasn't sure how Marcus would handle the noises and Emma. Emma screams in her sleep. His jaw tightened. Her mother's boyfriend tried to sell her to pay off a debt. A teacher noticed bruises, heard enough, and called me. I picked Emma up 3 days ago. I've been working to get her to a family in Oregon. They're expecting her tomorrow night. They've done this before. They're good. They're careful. My hand tightened on the phone so hard my knuckles ached. You brought a trafficker's victim into my house, I said slowly, without telling me, without telling the police. If I told the police, they'd follow protocol, he said. Emma would go into emergency foster care in the same state as the man who tried to sell her. If he figures out where she is, he'll come. Men like that don't just let product walk away. Don't call her product, I snapped, nausea rising. He nodded, eyes closing briefly. You're right. I'm sorry. You're asking me not to call the police, I said. I'm asking you to wait 24 hours, he said. Let me get Emma out safely to people who can protect her. Then, if you still want to call, if you want to turn me in, I won't fight it. His gaze flicked to Marcus. I'll tell them you didn't know anything. You and Marcus walk away clean. That's not how this works, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. It's exactly how this works, he said, because I did keep this from you. That's on me. You had a right to know. And you have a right to do whatever you feel you have to do now. I won't blame you. He looked tired, like he'd already imagined the prison cell and made peace with it. My brain spun in circles. Call 911, save unknown future children, possibly doom Emma to the system he's describing, possibly blow up whatever fragile, messed up life we've built. Don't call. Protect Emma. Live with a man who lies for good reasons and keeps secret doors in the basement. There was no version of this where I got to be both safe and innocent. Before I could make myself choose, Marcus's voice broke the silence. Is the little girl scared? He asked. So softly I almost missed it. David's eyes snapped to him. For the first time since this started, his expression was obvious, unguarded. He just nodded. Yeah, he said, she's very scared. Marcus loosened his grip on my shirt. Can I meet her? He asked. Maybe she wants to color. I looked down at my son, the same kid who'd been blocking his door with furniture and begging me not to send him to school, and realized he'd just found a kind of bravery I was still fumbling for. I didn't call the police, not because I trusted David, not fully, but because Emma was somewhere in my house, terrified and hidden, and I couldn't risk destroying her chance at safety. I chose the only option that felt remotely moral. Watch everything. Verify everything. Protect everyone, especially Marcus. I need to see her, I told David. All of it. No more secrets. He nodded like he'd been waiting for that. He led us to the attic, not the basement. A door I'd always assumed was a closet opened into a warm little room. Twinkle lights, crayons, a mattress covered with soft blankets. On the bed sat Emma, 6 years old, fragile, clutching a stuffed rabbit like it was her oxygen. David introduced us gently like he'd done this dozens of times, probably because he had. Marcus sat beside her and offered crayons. They colored quietly, side by side. My son, who'd been terrified for weeks, seemed steadier around someone more scared than him. And David watched them with a practiced tenderness that made my stomach twist. How many children had he cared for in secret? Show me proof, I told him downstairs. He opened his encrypted files, signal messages, burner emails, carefully coded contact logs. A school counselor. If she goes home tonight, she won't make it to Monday. A nurse. Guardians refusing hospital care. Can you take her? A foster family 2 states over. He bonded with our daughter. He's in therapy now. Safe. Then messages from kids years later. Mr. D, I'm in college now. Thank you for saving my life. I cried at that one. But there were cracks too. One close call with police surveillance, a foster family backing out last second, the emotional and legal minefield of everything he was doing alone. 6 years of this, all carried in silence. At 6 p.m., his phone rang. His face lost all its color. "The Oregon family had an emergency," he said. "They can't take Emma. I need 48 more hours." For the first time, I saw real fear in him. Exhaustion. A man drowning under the weight of his own mission. And that's when something in me shifted. I'm an analytical protector by nature. I manage chaos for a living, and right now, chaos needed managing. "Move," I said, pulling out my laptop. "We're fixing your system." For 2 hours, we built infrastructure he should have had years ago. Backup families, intake protocols, emergency contacts, safer medical procedures, a structured network map. I even texted my lawyer friend, "Hypothetically, what are the risks of running an underground child safety operation?" Her answer, "Huge, but not impossible to structure legally someday." Between the spreadsheets and trauma logistics, David finally broke enough to tell me the root: his sister. 14 years old, dead in foster care because no one listened when he begged for help. It wasn't heroism driving him. It was grief weaponized into purpose. Meanwhile, Marcus sat with Emma nearly the entire time, coloring rabbits and robots. Later, he whispered to me, "Mom, I wasn't scared of David. I was scared because it was a secret. Now that I know, it's kind of cool." Kids see through things adults complicate. 2 days later, Emma left, with a vetted retired nurse headed for Colorado. We stood in the driveway as the car pulled away, the weight of what we'd done heavy and strangely hopeful. Inside, I sat David down. If we're doing this, if we do it smarter, legal advice, systems, you don't carry this alone anymore, and Marcus stays out of it. Completely. Non-negotiable. He nodded, relieved. "Okay. Your way." Marcus sleeps in his own room again. No cameras, no chair against the door. I still wake at 2 a.m. sometimes, but my pulse doesn't immediately spike. The first night David wasn't in bed, I followed the light downstairs. The basement safe room looked different. Organized, safe, humane. David sat across from a teenage boy with a split lip, just talking quietly. I brought down hot chocolate. "You're safe here," I told the boy. "We'll figure this out together." David looked at me with something new. Not secrecy, not guilt. Partnership. I married a man with secrets. They almost destroyed us. But sometimes the truth is complicated. Marcus was right to be scared. I was right to investigate. David was right. Some children can't wait for the system. We're not heroes. Just a strange, patched-together family trying to do good where the law fails. The room in our basement? It's not a secret anymore. It's a promise.